Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
My name is Ben Rollman. My build is a representation of Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a Sony PlayStation game developed by Guerrilla Games. Came out, a handful of years ago, 9 years ago, something. It is the story of you are the main character, Aloy, and it's her mission to discover a bit about her past. And along the way, she fights these mechanized analogs of animals. And it's one of my, if not my most favorite game. It's open world, lots of fetch quests and discoveries about the history of Earth as it's progressed through kind of like a catastrophe. So you're unearthing a lot of really fun things. But I think a lot of what drew people into this game is the fact that these sort of robot, not dinosaurs, but animal analogs exist, and they're very unique looking. They've got a lot of character. The design elements are very cool. The tall neck itself is a set that LEGO actually put out a couple of years ago, and a lot of people were turned on to the game, especially from seeing that set. And they're like, this is a really unique kind of look. This is nothing I know anything about. What is it from? Well, it's from this game. You should try the game out. So based off that and the size of the figure, I was like, well, I guess I could try to make the rest of the machines in the scale of the tall neck. So the Thunderjaw here, the big sort of T-Rex one in the middle, this was designed by Hachiroku24, who did the Ideas Insect set. He posted this on his YouTube page, and he kept it in scale with the tall neck. So that was the next one I did. And at that point, I was like, well, now I got to fill out the full menagerie. So I built the Shell Snapper, which is the crab-looking one, and the Snapmaw, which is the alligator one, and then you just kind of have to do the rest. So it's like Pokemon. You got to collect them all. I can't just do 3 or 4,
Yeah, I love the variety of kind of creatures that you've built here. So
Right.
Take us through some of the build details in some of these and kind of the parts that you found useful for building at this scale and then this kind of unique creature design.
Got it. Yeah, so some of the uniqueness or some of the challenges really were getting the parts to be the representative of like a key aspect of that animal. So if you're looking at it, you notice these horns are very distinctive, the legs are very distinctive, they got a big container of some kind on them. So you try to recreate that as best you can, but you have to keep it in scale. Some of these machines are a little larger than they probably need to be. The Snapmaw and the Shell Snapper, they're a little larger than they probably should be, but I know that they had distinctive qualities that I wanted to capture with, certain pieces. So that's where, you find one piece that makes it and then you build the whole thing around that one piece. A good example would be some of these smaller, like horse-like or steer-like creatures. They are able to have Aloy ride on them like she does in the game, but they also have to have like sort of a tubular wiring flow to them. So I used harnesses for that, like the rubber four-hold harness piece, which also kind of adds like the tails on the back a little bit too. So that was a lot of fun. They don't move exactly like you want them to, but they move okay. They do their job. And yeah, you can cram Aloy in there in like a standing position so it looks like she's riding him.
Mm-hmm. One of the creatures that caught my eye was the flying one over here. So I love the kind of posability of that. And then what were some of the challenges of building that one, which obviously has the wings and a very different design?
Challenges for most of these, including that's a Stormbird, including that one, were you want to make it as posable as possible, even though I know a lot of these aren't going to be built by anybody else, but you want to make it look like they're organic enough to move, but static enough to where they can be on display without falling over. So the challenges come in like, will this hinge or will this ball and socket piece support the weight? Will it hold up under a certain amount of weight going over one side or another? And the Stormbird specifically is pretty heavy. It has several joints and hinges and stuff in it, and if you hold it wrong, the wings collapse, and it's got one little angled bar holding it up, and that may fall over at any second. So one of the main challenges is weight distribution, making sure you've got the right joint and it doesn't collapse under its own weight. So that was probably the biggest design issue I had with a lot of these.
Now, I've never played the game, so tell me a little bit more about some of these more like human-looking design structures that you've included on the map here and how that incorporates in.
For sure. So the game itself, you are about 1,000 years into the future after a giant calamity that basically ruins Earth. These machines have gone through and eaten all the biomass to convert it to fuel. And so what you see in the game is a lot of ruined buildings, rotted out skyscrapers, the rusted cars, but also like the remnants of giant battles that they had trying to stop this. It's called the Pharaoh Plague from running rampant across the earth. So I tried to incorporate a few like structured ruins, like the collapsed building over here. There's a settlement over here of bandits I tried to include, just some ruined bricks, things like that. The game itself takes place starting in like the Colorado Springs area in Denver, and then kind of works its way into Utah, Canyon Country. And I didn't realize that at first. I thought it was like a fantasy world of some kind until I ran into the ruins of the Air Force Academy. There's a chapel there that's very distinctive. And I'm walking through the front doors. I was like, I've been here before, and I had to look it up. And sure enough, they're like, yeah, it takes place in Colorado. I'm like, I grew up here, you know. So being able to incorporate some of the this feels like where I grew up, and it feels mountainous, and you know. But the terrain in the game it's beautiful. It's very well rendered and very lovingly thought out. It just makes you just kind of want to walk around and not really even accomplish anything. Just look at stuff as you go by. So.
What is that gray structure John's showing back there now?
So that's a gray structure. Is supposed to be a mountain. It's the best I could do because I wanted to incorporate. There's a tribe of people in the game called the Bannock, and they have paintings on the sides of mountains to show paths that you can follow to get to relics. So places of history for them, places of worship for them. So in order to do that on kind of a flat surface, I had to keep it very simple mountain shape instead of kind of doing the rock work trying to get up there. So now it looks like a giant ziggurat or a pyramid, but it kind of works with the mountains in the background kind of thing. So.
And speaking of mountains and landscaping, one of the things I love that you've done here is created this background and kind of a backdrop for the build. That's something I really wish a lot more builders would do that, because I feel like it lets you appreciate the rest of the build a lot more. It also makes like photos and video just a lot easier of the build. So talk about your kind of approach with that and how that came together for you.
So the theme of the convention here at Brick Rodeo was this year to build up. We wanted to kind of avoid a lot of the static base plate and throw a bunch of stuff on top of it kind of aspect that a lot of people build, including myself. So I tried to level the landscape up as I went, but it wasn't really getting the height I wanted, and I was very quickly running out of bricks in dark orange and green, and so I still needed to capture that sort of majesty aspect of this is a very large world, and the mountains are huge, and the desert landscapes are vast. So I was like, what if I just put a background behind it? And it started with the lettering on the sign at first. I just thought I'd put it on a sky back there, and the whole thing was going to be blue. But then I thought, well, I could add more mountains here, and I could put some of the red stone with the clouds and things behind it. So it turned out really well, and I liked it. It was a challenge getting it to stay up without falling over, because it's just base plates. With some Technic bars kind of holding it underneath. So as long as you don't push on it, it's fine,
Mm-hmm. And then for the rest of the landscaping, you talked about kind of wanting that height. So how did you kind of build that up underneath there? What do you find works well to kind of differentiate those different levels?
There's really no good way to do it that isn't brick intensive. There's a lot of, if you could probably see over on the sides, it's just stacks of bricks and 16 by 16 plates staggered as they go up, and you kind of fill that with bricks and slopes. A lot of the good landscaper pieces you'll see around, especially in the castle area, folks will work on their stonework a lot, which is a lot of the taller slopes and inverted slopes to kind of get that rocky face back and forth. I'm not as confident in that. I haven't really developed that skill yet, so this is just a lot of plate and brick and gradually kind of building up. But I think in future iterations, I'd like to have more tiling and slopes to make it a little smoother, more undulating. And also I'd like to incorporate more paths. The game is full of paths that you walk along to kind of get where you need to be for the next quest. And this doesn't have a lot of it, so a lot more plant work to kind of differentiate where she's walked, that kind of stuff.
One of the final creatures that I don't think we've talked about yet is this darker color scheme, the black one here. So how does that one work?
That is a machine called a Deathbringer. It's sort of on the nose naming-wise. It's just a giant gun platform. So the story of the game is that there's several machines that harvest or collect resources. There's several machines that are combat, and they defend the ones that are harvesting. And then there's these other ones that are called chariot class. This black corruptor that looks like a scorpion tail one is one of those. And then the Deathbringer is basically just something that, without going into too much detail of the game, was brought forth to basically wipe out everything. They're buried all over the earth. There's a signal that activates them that kind of show up out of the ground and just mow everything down. So in the game itself, you fight this twice, and you just have to kind of keep your distance and run as fast as you can and hope you don't get shot by it. It doesn't look as imposing compared to the tall neck, but when you're in the game fighting, you do not want to get close. It's just a giant platform of guns shooting at you, so it's pretty scary. I was really happy with the way it came out. The look of the darkness and the kind of the green tan look was really, made me really happy. But it's a very heavy build, so it's got a lot of clear bricks underneath holding it up, because otherwise the joints of the legs will buckle. But I wanted to keep the look of the kind of spindly legs coming into the bulbous kind of feet, so that's why it's got some support underneath it.
What you described is pretty much how I approach every video game, just running and hope I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of this. I mean, your character is fighting robot machines with a bow and arrow, so there's a lot of like running and hiding and please don't shoot me, and you power up as you go, but at the end of the day, you're a lady with a bow and arrow and a spear, and you're like, this is so unfair, this game. But yeah, it's very challenging. There's a little bit of combat with people, but it's mostly either trying to figure out how to defeat these or override them. You can learn how to kind of control them so they're not aggressive towards you, and you can ride them, or they can fight for you or something like that. So yeah, it's a very unique style of game. I think there's a couple others that have this sort of aesthetic of like robot animals or robot creatures. So it's not completely unique, but I always found it as like a really, really cool spin on like open world gaming.
To finish out here, I wanted to give a shout out to your trophy you won over here, which is also just its own really unique design.
Yeah, that it's funny because the gentleman who built that is in our lug, and he came over and he's like, "Yeah, keeping the trophy in Austin." I'm like, "Right on, man." So we had volunteers building all the trophies for the event here, and that one I took a picture of it and sent it to some friends and family. They're like, "That's really great, congratulations on winning that video game thing." And I'm like, "Well, that's just the trophy." They're like, "I know, but it's really great." I'm like, "Well, tell them you said so." It's a really awesome build on its own. So
yeah, perfect. Well, keep up the great work here. Thank you for bringing all this out, and just your work in the lug and just with Brick Rodeo as well. It's always such a great event, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.